I never thought I'd be telling this story to anyone, let alone to thousands of strangers online. But here I am. Because silence was eating me alive. You can only carry something heavy for so long before your hands begin to shake. And mine? They've been trembling for months. It started with a ring. Not just any ring. Her ring. The same one I slipped onto her finger 5 years ago, beneath the golden arch of sunlight streaming through that old chapel window. We'd just said our vows. She was crying, I remember. I thought they were tears of happiness, but sometimes tears lie. Her name is Eliza. We met at a volunteer project after a storm hit our town. I was helping to rebuild an old woman's roof. She brought coffee. She smiled. That kind of smile you think only exists in films. Warm, slow, the kind that disarms you. We hit it off instantly, like two puzzle pieces that never belonged to any other box. We got married 2 years after that. Quiet ceremony, just close friends, nothing extravagant. That's how we wanted it. We promised each other a simple life, honest, real. I didn't know then that even simplicity can be a mask. The first few years were good, stable, no major fights. We both worked long hours, her in marketing, me in architecture. She loved her job, or so I thought. She talked about it often, about her team, about the clients, about the quirky inside jokes. I knew their names before I ever met them, or at least I thought I did. Everything started to change last fall, slowly. So slowly that if you blinked, you'd miss it. Like water boiling under a low flame. You don't see the bubbles until they're already there, angry and loud. It was one night in November that I first noticed it. She came home late, said she had stayed behind to help with a campaign launch. She was tired. I offered to warm up dinner. She refused, went straight to the shower. That's when I saw it. Her hand, bare. The ring was missing. I didn't say anything that night. Or the next. I told myself maybe she forgot it at work. Maybe she took it off to cook or clean or… I don't know. There are 1,000 harmless reasons someone might take off a ring. But it kept happening. Every few days, she'd come home and her finger would be bare again. I watched, in silence, as that ring slowly disappeared from our marriage. I asked her once, half joking, "You forget your ring again?" She smiled, that same film-like smile. "Oh yeah, took it off to wash dishes at the office kitchen and forgot to put it back on. You know how clumsy I am." But she never forgot it before, not in 5 years. I started to notice other things, too. Her phone, which used to sit openly on the nightstand, was now always face down. Notifications turned off. Password changed. She said it was for security, since someone in her office had their phone stolen. Fair enough. But it didn't feel fair. It felt off. Then came the late-night texts. The buzz of her phone lighting up at 11 p.m., 1 a.m., always followed by a swift movement. Her turning it over, silencing it, pretending it didn't exist. I asked once who it was. She laughed, almost too quickly. "Oh, just Jenna. You know, the one, from HR. She just broke up with her boyfriend, needs someone to vent to." And I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. But when trust begins to crack, everything sounds like an excuse. The final thread unraveled on a Thursday afternoon. I was working from home, finishing up a project deadline. My phone pinged. A message from an unknown number. No text, just a photo, a selfie, and in that moment, my breath froze in my lungs. The picture was taken in what looked like an office. Neutral walls. A coffee machine in the background. Fluorescent lights. 2 people in frame, Eliza, and a man I had never seen before. But it wasn't their faces that gutted me. It was her hand. Or more accurately, her lack of a ring. She was laughing, leaning just a bit too close to him, her left hand on his shoulder. Naked. No ring, no shame. I stared at the image for a long time, Zoomed in, out, back in. My heart didn't race. It just stopped. Like my body already knew what my mind didn't want to admit. The message came 5 minutes later. You should know what she's doing when she says she's staying late. I didn't respond. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I didn't even move. Instead, I just sat there, staring at that photo. Not because I was shocked, but because somewhere deep down, a part of me wasn't. The silence between us had been growing for months. The ring was just the first sign. Her absence, her careful lies, her new perfume. Things I didn't want to see, but saw anyway. People think betrayal happens all at once, like a crash, a loud, violent betrayal of sound. But the worst betrayals, they come quietly, like fog, creeping in around you until you're choking, and you don't even know when it started. That night, she came home like usual, smiling, humming. She kissed my cheek, her hands full of grocery bags. I looked at her, and for a second, I wondered if she could see the shift in my eyes. I asked, "How was work?" She said, "Busy. You know, same as always." I just nodded. And the ring, still not on her finger, I didn't mention it. Not yet, because sometimes when someone plays with fire, they don't realize how close the flames are until they've already been burned, and I was done pretending I didn't smell the smoke. I didn't confront her that night. Not because I didn't have questions, not because I wasn't furious, but because I wanted her to have a chance to tell me the truth on her own. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was all a misunderstanding, that there was some explanation, however fragile, that could still hold our life together. But she never said a word. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like she always did, packed her lunch, checked her lipstick in the hallway mirror, smiled at me like nothing had changed. Then she left, heels clicking softly down the stairs, each step sounding like a countdown. Tick, tick, tick. After the door shut, I sat there, still. The quietness in our apartment felt different now, like it had weight. Every tick of the clock, every breath I took, felt like it was wrapped in something I couldn't shake. I looked at the selfie again, her hand on that man's shoulder, the closeness, the softness in her smile, the way her body tilted toward him, like he was familiar, like he was safe, and I realized this wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a slip-up, this was a comfort she had built with someone who wasn't me. Still, I didn't act right away. I'm not the kind of man who yells, who throws plates, who demands answers with a fist on the table. I believe in giving people enough rope. Sometimes they tie themselves up in it. Over the next few days, I began to watch her closely, not to trap her, just to see. To observe the person I had loved for so long with new eyes. There was a certain ease in her now, a lightness in her step. She laughed more, dressed differently, wore perfume she hadn't touched in years, and that ring, it might as well have never existed, I asked once, casually. "Haven't seen your ring in a while." She looked down at her hand like she'd forgotten it even existed. "Oh, I took it off when I was at the gym, must have left it in my locker. I'll find it." She didn't. 2 days later, it was still missing. I didn't press, I just nodded, made a small noise of acknowledgement. She seemed relieved I didn't push harder, almost like she expected a fight, and when it didn't come, she mistook my calm for forgiveness. But I wasn't forgiving. I was preparing. One evening, as she was in the shower, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a different name, Colin. No last name, just a first name and a heart emoji. That's all I needed. I didn't open the message. Didn't need to. My hands were steady now. I copied the number, saved it. The next day, during my lunch break, I called from a payphone near my office. I didn't even know those still existed, but it felt right. Something about the anonymity of it. "Hello?" A male voice answered. I didn't respond right away, just listened to the silence on the other end. Then I said calmly, "She's married." There was a pause, a long one. Then the man, Colin, spoke again. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't argue, just said, you do. I just thought you should know. She takes off her ring before she walks into the office, but she puts it back on the second she gets home. Another silence. But this one was different. Tense, heavy. I hung up. That was it. No threats, no accusations, just facts, because sometimes truth is the most violent weapon of all. That night, Eliza came home quieter than usual. Her eyes kept darting toward me, as if trying to read something in my expression. I played dumb, told her I was tired, ate dinner in silence. But I noticed something new. She was wearing her ring. It shimmered under the kitchen light, bold and glaring, as if trying to prove something. I smiled at her, a small, soft smile, and she looked afraid. Over the next few days, she changed. She started texting me more during work, sending little pictures of her lunch, selfies from her desk, making sure I saw that ring on her finger in every single frame. It was subtle, but deliberate, and that's when I knew. Colin had spoken to her. She was trying to recover control. One evening, she came and sat next to me on the couch, rested her head on my shoulder. Her voice was quiet. Do you ever feel like we've grown distant? I turned to look at her. What makes you say that? She shrugged. I don't know. I've been feeling strange lately, like we're not as close as we used to be. I wanted to laugh. Not as close as we used to be. You mean since you started undressing our marriage one lie at a time? But I didn't say that. I just nodded. Relationships go through phases. She looked at me, searching for something in my face. Maybe guilt. Maybe suspicion. I didn't give her either. The thing about betrayal is, it makes people paranoid. Even the guilty ones start to fear being hurt back. That's what was happening to her now. She was unraveling in her own guilt, but I wasn't going to stop her. I wasn't even going to help. I was just going to watch. A few days later, something strange happened. A message arrived in my inbox, not a number this time. An email. From a woman I didn't know. Subject line. I thought you should see this. Attached were 3 photos, all taken on different days, all in the same office. Eliza and Colin, close, touching, smiling. One of them was unmistakable, a kiss on the cheek, his hand on her waist. Her leaning in, eyes closed. I stared at the images for a long time. There was no room for doubt anymore. And yet, I felt oddly calm, because I wasn't the same man I was a month ago. She thought she was holding the cards, but I had the whole deck. I printed the photos, put them in an envelope, slipped it inside my work bag, not because I wanted to confront her yet, but because sometimes justice requires patience, and when it arrives, it speaks with silence, not fury. She didn't know it yet, but her quiet little affair was about to become a very loud reckoning. Something inside me changed after I saw those pictures. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was a kind of stillness. Like I had finally arrived at the edge of something I had known was coming for a long time. You stand there, wind against your face, and you realize this is where things end or begin again. That night, I didn't look at Eliza the way I used to, not with affection, not even with pain. I looked at her like a man looks at a stranger who somehow broke into his home and rearranged all the furniture. Everything felt familiar, but wrong. She sat across from me at dinner, talking about her day, about a new client who was so difficult. I nodded in all the right places, asked questions, even laughed once. But I was somewhere else entirely. I was remembering all the times I defended her to friends who thought she was too cold. Remembering every morning I made her coffee just the way she liked it. No sugar, extra hot. remembering that version of me that believed love was enough to protect us from rot. But love can't fix what lies kill, and yet I didn't say a word. Because she still thought I didn't know. She was trying in her own way to patch the holes. She'd been cooking more lately, leaving post-it notes on the mirror. Love you. Have a great day. She asked if I wanted to take a weekend trip, just the two of us. To reconnect, she said, her voice soft. But you can't rebuild a bridge that no longer leads anywhere. Still, I said yes. We drove out to a small cabin 2 hours from the city. I let her hold my hand. Let her pour wine for the two of us. Let her lie beside me under that sky full of stars, her head on my chest, like nothing had happened. But I didn't kiss her back. She noticed. I saw it in the way her eyes lingered on me the next morning. The way she asked if everything was okay. Of course, I replied, smiling. Just tired. We returned home on Sunday night. By Monday morning, she was wearing her ring full-time again. She started posting pictures of us online. Old ones, photos we hadn't looked at in years, captioned with things like, "Throwback with the best husband in the world." It was performance, and I let her perform, because I was planning something quietly. At work, I threw myself into a new design project, a public library renovation near the coast. I was meeting new people, collaborating across departments. One of the coordinators was a woman named Mia, early 30s, smart, soft-spoken, but sharp. Not beautiful in the loud way Eliza was, but calm, warm, real. We had lunch together a few times, shared stories, laughed. I never told her what was going on in my life. It wasn't like that. Not yet. But she noticed things. "You always seem like your mind is somewhere else," she said once, her eyes kind but curious. "I think I'm learning how to listen more," I told her. "Sometimes that takes more energy than people realize." She nodded. Didn't push. Something about her presence made me feel like I didn't have to prove anything or pretend. Eliza, on the other hand, was changing in the opposite direction. I could feel her watching me more, asking small, quiet questions about my schedule, about who I was working with. Once, she asked if she could drop off lunch at the office. That was new. In 5 years, she had never done that before. I told her not to worry, I'd already eaten. But I could see it then. The fear. Something in her had shifted. She was no longer bold, confident, careless. She was tentative, checking, calculating. Because when someone builds a lie and lives inside it, the scariest thing in the world is realizing the person they lied to might be building something too. She didn't know what I knew. She didn't know how long I had known it, but I think she felt it. A few nights later, I found her sitting on the balcony, staring out at the dark skyline. She had a blanket wrapped around her, glass of wine in her hand. She looked at me and asked, "Do you still trust me?" It came out so suddenly that I almost laughed. But I didn't. Instead, I walked over, sat next to her, and said, "Trust isn't something you check on like a light switch." She didn't reply for a long time, just sat there, eyes glassy. Then she whispered, "I haven't been myself lately." It was the first time she came close to confessing. I said nothing, because I wanted her to sit with it. The next day, I called in a favor. An old college friend of mine works in digital security. He helped me trace the IP address of the anonymous email that sent me the photos. It wasn't Colin. It was his ex-girlfriend. Turns out she worked in the same office too. She'd found out about their affair and wanted revenge. Not on Eliza, necessarily, but on him. I was just collateral clarity. I reached out to her. We spoke briefly. She confirmed everything. How long it had been going on. How Eliza would take off her ring and leave it in her bag before entering the office. How she once heard Eliza joke that, "He's practically my office husband." She said she was sorry. I told her I wasn't angry, just grateful, because the truth doesn't always come from the place you expect. Sometimes it falls into your lap through the chaos of someone else's storm. That night, I wrote a letter, To Eliza. I didn't write with bitterness. I didn't write with rage. I wrote with clarity. I told her I knew. I told her I'd known for a while. I told her about the photos, about the silence, about all the times she stood in front of me and chose to lie when she could have just come clean. Told her I wasn't going to scream or fight. I wasn't going to make a scene, because I didn't need to. Sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is walk away without a sound. I sealed the letter, left it on her nightstand, went to bed beside her one last time, and in the morning I got up before dawn, packed a small bag, and walked out the door without looking back. I don't know how long she stood there reading the letter. I wasn't there to see her face, to watch her hands tremble, or her mouth tighten into the shape of a woman who'd finally been seen for who she really was. I only know what she texted me the next morning. 4 words. Please, can we talk? I didn't reply. I was already halfway to the coast, the early morning sun rising behind me as the city disappeared in the rearview mirror. I hadn't packed much, just enough to last a week, maybe 2, maybe longer. I didn't know yet, but I needed space. Not just from her, but from the noise, the pretending, the performance that had become our marriage. I stayed in a small guest house near the project site. Simple place, wooden floors, the smell of salt in the air. Quiet. Peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in months. I spent my days working with the local planning team. And at night, I walked along the shoreline, listening to the waves say things I couldn't. Sometimes, Mia joined me. We didn't talk about Eliza, she never asked, and I never offered. But there was something healing in her presence. Gentle. Patient. Like she knew I was still bleeding somewhere deep, even if the wound no longer showed. Meanwhile, Eliza kept texting. At first, her messages were soft. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I didn't know how to fix it, so I just kept going. Then they turned anxious. Where are you? Please answer me. Don't leave like this. We can work through it. Then came the guilt. So, that's it? After everything we've built? You're really just going to walk away? But what she didn't understand was, she had walked away long before I did. The day she took off her ring without a second thought. The day she leaned into another man like he was home. The day she let silence grow in the spaces where trust used to live. I wasn't abandoning her. I was finally choosing me. 2 days later, she showed up at my office. I saw her from across the hall, standing there with that familiar expression of rehearsed vulnerability, the same one she used when she needed forgiveness before even offering an apology. I stepped out to meet her, calm, collected. She tried to smile. You didn't answer my calls. I know, I said quietly. She hesitated. Can we go somewhere? Talk, please? I nodded toward a small courtyard outside the building. We sat on opposite ends of the bench. She looked thinner, paler. The makeup couldn't hide the fatigue in her eyes. Maybe it was the weight of what she'd done, or maybe it was just fear. Fear that she was losing the one person who had always stayed. I never meant for it to get that far, she began. It was just, I felt like you were drifting. We were drifting. I didn't interrupt, just listened. I know that doesn't excuse anything, she continued. I broke something important, but I want to fix it. I turned to her, eyes steady. You want to fix it because it's broken, or because now you're scared it's too late? She looked down at her hands. She was still wearing the ring. I don't know, she whispered. And that was the first honest thing she'd said in a long time. I stood up. You want to know what hurt the most? It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the lies. It was the fact that you never thought I deserved the truth until you were about to lose me. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I'm not angry anymore, Eliza, I said, but I'm not yours anymore either. Her voice cracked. So, that's it? I paused, looked at her one last time. This isn't punishment, I said. It's consequence. Then I walked away. Later that evening, I received one final message from her. No apology, no begging, just, I never thought you'd leave without fighting for me. And I stared at those words for a long time, because that's what she never understood. I did fight. I fought every day. I stayed silent while watching her slip away. I fought every time I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Every time I convinced myself that I was just overthinking things. Every time I saw her bare hand and still smiled at her like nothing was missing. She just never noticed the fight because I never raised my voice. But silence was the war she never saw coming. Over the next week, I started to feel lighter. I found myself waking up without that heavy feeling in my chest. The kind that comes from sharing a bed with someone who's already emotionally gone. Mia and I talked more. We shared meals, long walks, even a bottle of wine one night while watching the tide roll in. There was no rush, no flirtation, just presence, a real one. And that, in itself, felt sacred. One evening, she asked me, "Do you still love her?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I think I loved the version of her that loved me back." She nodded, as if she understood. Sometimes, she said gently, people only show you who they are when they think you won't leave. I looked out at the sea. Then I'm glad I left, I said, and I meant it, because letting go wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. She thought the worst part was over, that once I walked out, things would return to silence, that maybe I'd cool down, come back, or at the very least, disappear quietly. People like her, they count on silence. They wrap themselves in it like armor, hoping it'll protect them from consequences they believe they're too clever to face. But silence is never still for long. It echoes, and when it does, it brings things with it. A week after our talk on that bench, I received a message from an old mutual friend, Darren, someone who had been at our wedding, who had known us both since the early days. His tone was careful, but direct. "Hey man, this might be out of line, but Eliza's been telling people you left her out of nowhere, said you had someone else, that she's been blindsided." For a moment, I didn't even feel anger, just a deep, tired disappointment, like watching someone you once admired take one final step into the kind of person you always prayed they wouldn't become. I thanked Darren for the heads up, told him I appreciated his honesty. Then I sat down and wrote another letter. This one wasn't for Eliza. It was for the truth. I didn't name names, I didn't point fingers, but I posted the truth, quietly, calmly, on my private account, where friends and family who mattered could see. I wrote about the silences, the missing ring, the late nights, the photo. I wrote about the moment I knew our marriage had ended, not with a scream, not even with a betrayal, but with a look. That soft practice smile she gave someone else, the one I used to believe was only mine. And then I ended with this: love is choosing someone even on the days they're hard to love. But respect is what keeps you from making them feel like they're not enough. She stopped respecting me before she stopped loving me. And I left, not because I had someone else, but because I finally remembered who I was before I forgot myself for her. I didn't need to post pictures or receipts, just the truth. It spread faster than I expected. People reached out, some with sympathy, some with quiet guilt. They'd believed her version, and now they were realizing it was a story rewritten out of fear, not fact. And Eliza? She went quiet, not a word for days. Until one afternoon, I got a call. It was Colin. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. His voice was low, hesitant. "Hey." I didn't know who else to call. I didn't respond. He sighed. "She told me you knew everything, that you'd left. She said you'd moved on already, But I've been seeing things online. People are talking. I let the silence hang between us. He waited for me to say something. I didn't. Finally, he said, I ended it with her. I raised an eyebrow, even though he couldn't see it. Because you felt guilty? There was a pause. Because I realized she was never honest with either of us. He admitted that after our encounter, that anonymous phone call I made, he started to see the cracks too. How she changed her story, how she shifted blame, how she played the victim every time things didn't go her way. She's not who I thought she was, he said. I said only one thing before hanging up. I hope you remember that next time someone takes off a ring to be with you. Click. That weekend, I heard from another friend. This time, someone from her office. They told me Eliza had been called into a meeting with HR. Apparently someone, possibly Colin's ex, or someone who'd seen too much, had reported an inappropriate relationship during work hours. There were concerns, emails, photos. She wasn't fired, but her image, her carefully curated professionalism. It was crumbling. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need revenge. I wasn't interested in watching her suffer. But there was a strange, quiet peace in knowing that the weight of her choices had finally caught up to her. She texted again that night. Why are you doing this? I stared at the message for a long time. Because that was always her question. Why are you doing this? Not what have I done? Not how did I hurt you? Just why are you making me deal with the consequences of what I caused? I never replied. Instead, I stepped outside the guest house. The sky was dark but clear. The stars looked different out here, closer somehow. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who doubted himself every time she turned away, the one who waited for her to come back, ring or not, the one who thought staying quiet was the same as being strong. But I know better now. There's a strength in leaving, a strength in refusing, to carry shame that doesn't belong to you. And there's a kind of power that comes from knowing you didn't have to destroy someone to finally be free of them. Because sometimes the cleanest break doesn't bleed, it just heals. There's something strange about betrayal. It strips you bare, but it also makes you see more clearly. Like fog lifting after a long rain, everything you once ignored starts to shine through. Every glance, every quiet lie, every moment that didn't sit right but you brushed off in the name of love. I used to think closure came from confrontation, from making the other person understand how badly they hurt you. But sometimes closure is something you give yourself, and sometimes it looks a lot like truth, served cold, quiet, and undeniable. You see, there's something I haven't told you yet. Something I kept tucked away, while Eliza danced around her guilt, while she clutched at the ruins of our life like someone desperately trying to hold water in her hands. I didn't leave without a plan, and I didn't walk away empty-handed. Months before everything came undone, before the missing ring, before the late nights, I already knew something wasn't right. You can't share a bed with someone for 5 years and not feel when something in them turns cold. So I started keeping notes, not in the obsessive way, not to trap her, but because I knew that if this ended, and some part of me already sensed, it wouldn't just be emotional, it would be legal. We owned property together, shared accounts, and I'd be damned if she tried to walk away clean while I was left picking up the shards of the life she broke. She never knew, but I had started copying financial documents, screenshots, bank activity, messages she carelessly left on her synced tablet at home. I wasn't looking to destroy her, just protect myself. And then there was the apartment, the one she told me she had rented for work retreats, a few times a month. Said it was something. Her boss offered to employees to recharge. I never questioned it back then. But after I saw the selfie, the one her co-worker sent me, I remembered the lamp in the background, the grey and gold lampshade with a chipped corner, and it hit me. I'd seen that lamp before, not in the office, In a photo she'd once shown me from that same retreat apartment, a quick selfie of her with a glass of wine, captioned, "Unwinding after a long pitch meeting." I went back through our photo archives, found the image, same lamp, same rug, same throw pillow. She wasn't meeting clients there. She was meeting him. It wasn't a retreat apartment. It was theirs. That discovery changed something in me. I stopped hoping she would come clean. I stopped believing this was a moment of weakness. This was deliberate, coordinated, repeated, and that meant I had a choice: fall apart quietly or rebuild carefully. So while she played the loyal wife in public again, ring on, smile wide, I reached out to a lawyer, discreetly, a friend of my uncle's, someone with experience in quiet divorces where one side didn't yet know they were losing. He guided me through the paperwork, helped me prepare for the asset division, helped me find proof, protected me from what would inevitably come once she realized she wasn't going to be the one who walked away first. That was the real twist. Because Eliza, she was still performing, damage control, still messaging me every few days, still hinting at reconciliation, still trying to rebrand the affair as a mistake. She regretted. She had no idea I had already filed for separation, or that the letter from my lawyer was scheduled to arrive at her office the following Monday, not her home. Her office. Why? Because she made her mess there. Because that's where she took off her ring. Because that's where she smiled at another man while I waited for her to come home. And because sometimes people need to face the truth in the same place they thought they could hide from it. The letter wasn't dramatic, just clear, calm, legal. It included the evidence, photos, account activity, travel records, all tied together in a quiet narrative of trust broken. Not with words, but with facts. That Monday afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was her assistant. "Hi, I'm so sorry to message you, but Eliza just left the office in tears. Is she okay?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence would answer everything for me. Later that evening, her name popped up on my screen again. This time, a call. I let it ring. Then another. And another. Finally picked up, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted her to hear mine. "Why did you do this at my work?" she said, voice trembling. "Why would you embarrass me like that?" I took a long breath, then said softly, "You didn't seem embarrassed when you took your ring off in that building. Why should you be now?" She didn't respond. Just the sound of her breath, sharp and shallow. "You could have come to me. You could have told the truth. We could have ended this with dignity," I continued. "I was going to," she whispered. "No," I said. "Calm. You were going to keep lying until I either caught you or forgave you by force of habit." She tried to say something, but I stopped her. "I'm not angry, Eliza, not anymore, but I am done, and you don't get to rewrite this story just because it no longer serves you." She cried then, real tears. I could hear it, but I felt nothing. No triumph, no pleasure, just the final release of something that had died long ago. She asked, one last time, "Is this really how you want it to end?" I looked out at the sea again. The sky stretched wide above me, and I said, "No, but it's the ending you wrote." Then I hung up, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt free. It's strange how quiet peace can be. Not the kind of silence that follows a slammed door or an unanswered question. No, this one is softer, steady, the kind that doesn't make you flinch anymore when your phone buzzes, the kind that fills your lungs instead of tightening your chest. That's the kind of quiet I found finally, after everything. After Eliza. The divorce moved quickly after that letter reached her. Maybe she expected me to delay it, to come crawling back once she showed just enough sorrow, just enough regret. Maybe she thought I still needed her. She didn't understand yet. I never needed her. I chose her every day, and when she stopped choosing me, that's when it ended. She didn't contest the terms. Maybe she knew she wouldn't win. Or maybe deep down, she finally realized what she'd really lost. Not a man who would fight, but a man who wouldn't be fought over anymore. I signed the final papers on a quiet Thursday afternoon. The sky was soft with clouds. I walked out of the lawyer's office and just stood there for a while. No tears. No bitterness. Just breath. Just a strange stillness that whispered, "You made it out." It was a feeling I hadn't known I was waiting for. I went back to the coast that weekend. The project had wrapped up, but I needed to return. Not for work, but for something else. For myself. Mia was still there. We had kept in touch, occasional messages, simple check-ins. She never asked what happened with Eliza, never pried. She just let me arrive at my own pace. When I saw her again, she smiled like she'd been expecting me. "Hi," she said, brushing hair behind her ear like the wind was talking to her too. "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in months. We sat on the same bench we'd once shared near the lighthouse, just watching the waves, letting the breeze run its fingers through the silence between us. And then, after a while, she turned to me. "You look different." "How so?" "Lighter." I looked out at the ocean. Maybe I finally stopped carrying something that was never mine to hold. She nodded, eyes on the horizon. Sometimes we think love means holding on no matter what, but maybe real love, the kind that lasts, isn't about holding tighter. It's about knowing when to let go, I finished for her. She smiled, soft. Exactly. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Mia becomes part of it. Maybe she doesn't. But that's not what matters now. What matters is that I'm no longer afraid of looking forward. For so long, I lived inside a version of love that was half light and half shadow, a place where I doubted myself so deeply that I began to believe I deserved less. That loyalty meant silence. That forgiveness meant forgetting. But I don't live there anymore. Now, I live where the air is clear, where rings mean something real, where love isn't a performance. It's a choice, made daily, with eyes wide open and hands that don't let go when things get hard, but also don't hold on when the soul starts to rot. Eliza, I don't hate her. I hope she finds something real, too, something she won't have to lie to keep. Maybe then she'll understand the cost of what she lost. Not just me, but the version of herself that once believed in something whole. Sometimes people don't realize what they've had until they see it walking away. And sometimes you don't realize how strong you've become until you leave quietly, with your dignity intact and never look back. So here I am, no ring, no bitterness, no unfinished sentences, just a man walking into the future. Light, free, whole.